What's up, y'all? Y'all been hearing me talk about Jack Daniel's, our presenting sponsors. Tennessee Sour Mash Whiskey. Always enjoy it responsibly. Never allow underage drinking. Thank you, Jack Daniel's, for everything you do. All of the different sectors of this wonderful thing we call life that you're involved in, what you support. Freedom, military, Blue Line, families, communities, conservation, outdoors, responsibility. Every drip and drop of Jack Daniel's that you see across the world. And when I say world, it's sold in 177 freaking countries. And every bit of that Jack Daniel's is made in one place, one distillery, Lynchburg, Tennessee. Do y'all even fathom that? You know, like there's other brands like Coca-Cola, Budweiser, great American iconic brands that are made in different breweries and canning operations all over the world and then distributed out. Jack Daniel's is made in Lynchburg, Tennessee. Do you know how many millions of gallons it takes to sell in 177 countries? The folks down there, the family down there, the aura, the culture, the vibe is so awesome. We just got back from Lynchburg, Tennessee for the 2021 The Jack is Back World Championship Barbecue. I got to run with Tuffy Stone, 6-time world champion, 3-time Jack winner. It was some of the coolest experiences of my life, and I learned even more about humility being around Tuffy Stone, seeing how he treated people. He took time out of his day to talk to every single person that came up and wanted them to sign a book, sign a barrel lid, sign a hat. Amazing. He makes chicken and brisket and ribs taste good, and the dude is a freaking celebrity and just a badass human being. Thank you, Tuffy Stone, the Cool Smoke team, for having me, opening your doors and letting me live in your shoes for a couple days. I also met another new friend when I was in Lynchburg, Tennessee, and she is our guest today. She has a company called Girls Can Grill at girlscangrill.com. Christie Vanover is a backyard aficionado. That's what I call people like Christie. I got to hang with her and her sister. Again, they are badass people. You know why? Because we share a common love for the outdoors and family and backyard and enjoying Jack Daniel's responsibly. And also this lady was a judge. And that's what I really want to talk about today is how in the hell can you tell the difference in all of these top 25 pit masters in the world? Miss Christie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Chad. I'm looking forward to this.
Heck yeah. You are, you're back in Las Vegas after spending time in Lynchburg. I assume you had been there before?
Yes. That was my 4th time judging.
Is it the coolest place in America? One of them?
It's so magical, like just to be brought back kind of to a piece of history, to the way things kind of used to be. People open the door for you. They say, sir or ma'am. They don't know you and they feed you. They bring you in for a drink or for a nice meal. And yeah, it's Americana all captured into this little town that manufactures an abundance of whiskey. It's amazing.
And it's just a cool family. I mean, just the whole Jack family, from Kevin the Barrel Man to Diane to Greg to Casey to Tommy to Dave up on the hill, the trailers up on top of Barbecue Hill.
Yeah,
an amazing place.
Yeah, they really, once you get to know them, you become family immediately. And having been there for now 4 years, the family grows larger each time, but they would all give you the shirts off their back. It's an incredible feeling to have those type of people in your world.
Yeah. What did you think, honestly? Be honest now. I'm putting you on the spot here. What did you think of Dean James and the treatment on that little Friday night concert?
Oh my God, were they amazing. Like, I recorded so much of them and danced my butt off to them. They were phenomenal. What they could do on the keyboards and on the guitars and the drums. It just so entertaining. You were there, like at the end, they were like, okay, last call, we're going to do one more song. And we were like, three more. And then I think they did like 5 or 6 more. It was, the crowd just didn't want to have them stop playing. It was just so fun.
I think that because of the kind of the stipulations of Barbecue Hill and what the responsibility of, the event taking place and starting early the next day. And a lot of the pit masters leaving at like 1 or 2 in the morning to go start their fires and get their cookers ready. I think that Greg or somebody at Jack Daniel's literally had to have the AV team pull the plug because everybody was having so much fun.
Yeah.
Dean James has got so much talent, but that kind of kicked off a weekend of just stories and reminiscing and friendships being bonded and formed. And then there's some competition there. But the thing that was weird about it to me is even during the award ceremony, And seeing get basted up there as the grand champion, well deserved, because I got to eat some of his food because Tuffy Stone walked me over there. And Tim took first in the ribs, and I got to eat his ribs. That dude can make pork taste amazing. But there was never one time, you go to a football game and you hear the crowd like they want their team to win, and they are fighting with the other fans, like we're the best, and the World Series or the playoffs right now, it's LA Dodgers against the Braves, and the Dodgers fans are pissed. And there was none of that here, even though these guys are competing for big money, more so credibility and just the ability to call themselves the grand champion for 1 year of the Jack Daniels Invitational. I never sensed competition among the competitors. That's what's kind of cool about the Jack.
Yeah, that's what's cool about barbecue. So I'm a competitive pit master in addition to a judge for competitions. And that the family within barbecue community is amazing. I mean, I've shown up to a comp and forgotten an ingredient and been able to go to the guy next to me and say, you know what, I forgot this sauce. Do you have any extra? And he'll be like, yeah, I've got this much you can use. And they lend it to you. They team up with you because they want to beat you at your best game. They don't want to beat you because you forgot an ingredient. And the Jack itself, the fact that the Jack is back, like all of these teams they are friends, but they live all over the world or all over the country, with COVID and everything, they haven't been able to get together as frequently as we have in the past. And so for them all to reunite in the holler, and it doesn't matter if it's muddy, it doesn't matter if it's sunny, it just doesn't matter. Like everybody just comes back together and they light their fires, they get around, they feed each other before the big event, just like Tuffy did, had a bunch of teams in there. You're right. There's not the competitive edge of wanting to beat somebody and like not care for that person. Like if someone else beats you and they get a call, you're still excited for them. You're disappointed in yourself, but because it's an independent competitive sport, it's really what you deliver and what you bring to the table. So if you give your best and you win, awesome. If someone else gave their best, you're proud and excited for them too.
So how do you yourself qualify? What is your experience or what is your credibility to be called upon to be a judge? And what gives you the audacity to judge one Tuffy Stone or get basted? And Tim, what gives you the audacity, Miss Christie? How do you even sleep at night thinking that you can judge these world champion pitmasters?
That is a very fair question. And I will proudly say that most of the people in the tent are either master CBJs, which is a certified barbecue judge, which means they've judged 30 times or more, or they're members of the Barbecue Hall of Fame, like Chris Lilly, Dr. Barbecue's usually in there. Mike Mills used to judge in there. So it's that caliber of people up there is phenomenal. And am I at that level? Absolutely not. I haven't won a world championship. I'm not a Barbecue Hall of Famer. But I feel like I know barbecue. I know the competitive side of barbecue as well. And I think that's one of the things that the teams appreciate about me being in the tent is that I understand what it takes to prepare that perfect bite. I know what judges are looking for as a CBJ myself. And so I add value by understanding what exactly that perfect bite is to give those scores of a 999. I also judge so 9 is a perfect score. You judge on taste, tenderness, and appearance. And so I always start at the top, especially at a world championships. Everything that comes in front of me, I'm expecting it to be a 9. And then from there, it might slip down a little. There are other judges who will actually start at the bottom, which the lowest score is a 1, which is a disqualified. So, usually they'll like kind of grade it like a 6 or above. And I think that that's the wrong approach. I think you should expect, especially at World Food Championships, for the best bite to be in the box. It's going to be a 9. And then occasionally you'll find something where, maybe it has a little bit too much of the smoke flavor, or maybe it got a little bit too spicy, or the tenderness. Usually it's a matter of tenderness over taste. That is where the score starts to slip just a little bit. Maybe something's a little too tender. We had a lot of that this time, or sometimes too tight, like if your ribs are too tight.
But you also don't want them to fall off the bone.
Correct. That's the challenge. Competition barbecue, the taste and the execution is so much different than backyard barbecue, or even going to a restaurant like Famous Dave's, who was a judge, by the way. He was judging at my table. But like you go to his restaurant and you're going to get fall off the bone ribs. That's what people traditionally want. But when you go to a competition, you actually, it's the execution of being able to cook it to a beautiful tenderness where you just take a bite and the meat comes off cleanly, but of your bite, but then the rest of it stays on the bone. So if you can nail that mark, then that's going to give you that perfect 9 in tenderness.
Okay. I got to ask you this real quick though. So you're sitting at this judge's table and the walk to the tent's a big deal. These pit masters, they come out of their trailer, they got this box that they put the garments in there, and then they lay out the food. And Jack, it was 7 servings, 7 portions, hence the Jack Old number 7. But it's chicken, it's ribs, it's pulled pork or whatever kind of pork you're going to do. It's brisket, and it's what am I missing?
They
Brisket,
had a couple, and those are the big 4 for the
those are the 4.
KCBS.
Those are the 4.
Yeah. And then there was the ancillary contest for sauce, cook's choice, and dessert. I saw some cool desserts. Yeah.
But you're sitting at this table and you have these styrofoam boxes coming in front of you. Like you open one up and that box is all cool smokes. Their 7 portions are laid out. You put a fork in there and take a little bit off, or how do they portion it out first of all?
So traditionally at a competition, what they would do
let
is
me back up. That was a dumb question. I'm sorry, Miss Christie.
Okay,
how many judges are judging for the grand champion?
Okay, that's a great question. So in any KCBS competition, that's the Kansas City Barbecue Society, there are 6 judges per table. So let's say there's 48 teams, then each judge is going to get 6 portions from 6 different teams, and then there'll be subsequent tables. So like not everybody in that whole place tasted cool smoke. One table of 6 tasted cool smoke.
Oh, so it's a conglomerate. Oh,
correct. Along with 5 other teams will be on that table. So it's a matter actually of winning your table. Like you want to be the best at your table versus the best in the whole, in all the tables. And if you're the best at the table, then basically it's, let's say there's 8 tables. In this, there's a lot more than that. But if there's, 8, 10 tables, whatever, then it's those top, whoever's winning those tables, it's really a score chase between those. But yeah, so the boxes, the 6 boxes come to the table, and there's a table captain, and the table captain opens the box and shows it to all the judges. And the first thing that we judge on is appearance. Does this look appetizing? Does this meat look delicious? Is this something I want to eat? So they go through and they open each box, and they do that for each box. And then it gets to the point where then you take your piece. Due to COVID, they had to serve us this time. Usually though, the judge will just reach in and grab their piece. Once you have all 6 pieces from 6 different teams on your placemat, then you start judging the first one. And you don't judge them against each other. That's definitely not, you shouldn't take a bite of one and then take a bite of the third one and then go, oh, you know what? The first one was better. Let me go back and change that score. It's independent voting for each bite. You finish your card, you go on to the next one, erase your mind from the bite you had previously. You're judging it just on itself. So one may be a little bit spicier, but that shouldn't matter. It's just, does this one taste delicious? Is the texture perfect? And then obviously the appearance as well.
So at a sushi bar, people get this little tray and it's got wasabi in there that we always put way too much soy sauce on our fish as Americans, in my opinion. But then there's ginger. That ginger is a palate cleanser. That ginger is supposed to let you taste the difference between a salmon or a yellowtail or a tuna or a mackerel or a unagi or a octopus or whatever you're eating. How do you cleanse your palate in between bites? If you have 6 bites of rib on your plate at one time, how do you not know that when you taste this one, you still don't have some of this one left on your palate?
So we are given oyster crackers or saltines. It depends on the competition. This one we were given oyster crackers. So I'm always eating at least one oyster cracker, swishing my mouth with water, letting it rest a second, and then going on to the next bite. And if I want to take a second bite or third bite of that one I'm judging, then I'll do that before switching to another cracker. But yes, it's really important to cleanse your palate because the sauces are different and you don't want a little bit of that lingering, rib stuck in your tooth that you really taste in the last guy's, cook versus the one that you're testing then. So that's the technique that we used.
Chicken skin. I got to walk around. I got to walk around some different HQs, I guess, of the different pit masters placed along the grounds there at the park in Lynchburg, and some was an enjoyable bite, but I could really tell that it wasn't done enough. There was too much pull on the skin to where your teeth went through it, but it didn't come off with the meat on the thigh. I love chicken thigh when the skin's done right. I'm a waterfowl hunter, Miss Christie, so I love rendering. I love crispy skin. I love speckled belly geese in California with crispy skin. I love that part of it. Is this a big part of the chicken? Because a lot of the chicken tasted good, but the skin was a little bit off for me on some of them.
Absolutely. That's actually probably one of the hardest things, I think. I mean, brisket's probably the hardest cut to cook, but when it comes to chicken, a lot of people actually have been starting to switch to drums. You can cook any part of the chicken. You could turn in 6 breasts, or in this case 7, because, I take that back. With the jack's a little bit different. With traditional KCBS comps, it's 6 pieces of any part of the chicken. So you could do 6 wings, breast, thighs, etc. With this one, you did have to do 6 pieces of dark meat and 1 piece of light meat. So surprisingly, on my table, I actually had 3 legs and 3 thighs. So what teams have been experimenting with over the past couple of years is using the legs instead of the thighs, because that meat does render, the fat does render more easily, so that you don't have to do a lot of pre-work in order to get the skins ready. Just the biggest challenge is working around that tendon and either clipping it out or before the cook or after the cook, so the judge doesn't bite the tendon right there in the drum. But with the thighs, a technique that most people use is they will actually take the skins off. They will jacquard them, poke them with a lot of holes basically, and or scrape the fat on the underside off and then put them back on the thigh. Because if you don't do that, and if you don't render it down enough, you're going to have the exact experience that you talked about, to where they take that bite and the inside and the meat is great, but it's got that pull and that tug that's just not really enjoyable on the palate.
I think that it's so interesting to me to be like, you've already said some stuff about what chicken's supposed to be, but when you go into a chicken restaurant, it's not that. Or Famous Dave's ribs are not what a competition rib should be. Like the education process of becoming a fine barbecue connoisseur is so important to me. And going around to the Houston or the Memphis in May or the Kansas City Royal or the Jack, I've learned all of the, what a piece of brisket's supposed to look like as it lays over your index finger.
Yep.
I want you to explain to me, though, like there's so much that was going through my head as I listened to the awards come down for the top 10, and you take away the subsidiaries like the sauce and the dessert and everything, and the people's choice. I want to talk about getting basted, the grand champion. There was sometimes his number was not called, his name was not called in at least 2 of the top 10s of the meets. How I know that he's the overall points leader, but just that day of barbecuing, how in the hell can you win grand champion if you're at least not placing in the top 10 of all of them?
It all comes down to consistency. And that's the thing I think any barbecue class you go to or any pitmaster, competitive pitmaster you talk to, that's the number one thing is consistency. You actually could place maybe 4th or 5th all through all the categories, or, 5 or above, and still get grand champion. Or in this case, you could be maybe 12th and not get a call and still be grand champion. If all 4 of your meats are high enough, and then you have a couple up there that are really top, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, it's possible the way the points land, because the other folks may not be as consistent. So they might get a 1st place call in chicken or a 5th place call in chicken, but then everything else that they're cooking falls flat. Maybe they're like 30th or 60th. And so it's a points total. It's adding up all those points together. And if you can maintain to where the perfect score is a 180. So if you can get in the 170s and above, once for comp like this, 175s and above on all 4 of your meats, then you've got a really great chance. But if you slip and your brisket happened to get a 160 or even, God forsake, a 150, which would be traumatizing. But if you're getting down to those levels, then there's no way you're going to be up there towards the top. So it's all that consistency.
Wow. That was really interesting to me of like, wow, you can become, there were several teams that had pretty good placings in the entire, in all 4 of the categories for the 4 meets, but the one that won it was not in all the top 10. So, but again, it's those tables and winning that table. And just because like every judge didn't, agree that maybe Get Basted's ribs weren't the number one, because Tim won ribs. I don't know if Get Basted was in there, but Tim wins a number 1 in one of the categories. And I think he ends up like 6th, 5th or 6th or 7th overall in the grand. Does that sound about right if you remember?
I think so. And then like even looking at Big Papa Smokers, they're out here on the West Coast. I don't know if you had a chance to meet Sterling Ball, but I think he maybe got one call in perhaps brisket. I think it was down in the 9th place or so. Sorry, Sterling, if I got that wrong, but in the end, he ended up 4th or 5th overall. So he had only one call, but he was so consistent across the board with the rest of his meats comparatively to everybody else who competed that was good enough to get him up there toward the top at the end.
I think that, tell me this real quick. I kept hearing a lot of this being floated around the grounds too, Miss Christie, of that this is the World Series. This the Jack. Why is Memphis in May or Houston or the Royal not considered? Why is everybody so high on the Jack?
Yes, it's definitely considered the most premier barbecue competition in the world. I mean, usually it is a world championship where international teams come in. Due to COVID, they just couldn't do that this time. But I think what makes it so special is, one, the location. I mean, as you explained in your opening, just the beauty of Lynchburg, but two, what it requires to qualify for the Jack. So the Royal, as an example, is a KCBS competition. And in order to, well, first of all, there's two competitions. There's the Invitational, which any team in America can sign up and compete. And that's when you have like 600, 800 teams, when it's not COVID, competing against each other for that world championship. And then they have what's called the Invitational. And to be invited to compete at the American Royal, you just have, well, I shouldn't say just, it's challenging, but you have to win one grand champion in order to qualify. And then you can compete at the Open, or excuse me, at the Invitational. And there's still probably 100 plus teams at that competition. When it comes to the Jack, not only do you have to win a grand championship, but then your name basically, or your bung, like the whiskey bung, goes into a draw. And so let's say in California, you won a California state championship. Well, they might have 5 state championships. And if you won one, there's 4 other people who are going to have a chance to get a draw for California. So the chances of you getting into the Jack are really slim. The only other ways that you can get in is if you're the only team from your state to have won. So for instance, if you decide to get into barbecue and you represented Nevada and you won, no other Nevada teams won, then you'd get an automatic draw because they try to represent each state. Another way is if you've got 7 grand championships within one single year, then that gets you an automatic bid. A couple of teams have done that. Travis Clark, who actually won last year, that's how he got in. And he won, I think, 7 wins for like 5 years in a row. Like that's how he's the GOAT. He's amazing. And then the other way that you can get an invitation is if you win the American Royal or Memphis in May, or I think Houston Rodeo, and then you get in. So to get in, you are the highest caliber. I mean, it's really, really challenging.
Where do you fit in this picture personally? Do you have aspirations of competing here? Do you competition cook personally? And is your goal to win the Jack?
Yes, yes, and yes. So I've been competing for a couple of years now, probably 3 or 4 now. The challenge on the West Coast is there's not a lot of competitions out West, especially with COVID. A lot of stuff got shut down, especially in California. So I was on track in 2020. My calendar was lined up where I was going to do 10 competitions, and I was on a roll. In 2019, I had the number 2 brisket by points in the country based on the number of comps that I had cooked at. So I was doing really well. I was on a roll, and then COVID hit. And I think in 2019, I had maybe 2 competitions, and I got 3rd place, and I lost to Getting Basted, and his wife actually cooked that day, and I lost to her. She was 2nd, and I was 3rd after that, but I won brisket. And then everything shut down. And so this year I've only been able to compete twice. Definitely got a little bit rusty. I've got a comp actually in 2 weeks in Indio, California that I'm really looking forward to, but I'm super hoping that 2022 opens back up. I can get back in there because my dream is absolutely to cook at the Jack. I love to judge the Jack. And now that I've judged it, I feel even better. But to cook at the Jack, and my goal for every comp is, of course I want to win, but my goal is always have my name called, but most importantly, have fun with my family and with my friends. Because my family comes along with me to cook, my husband and my in-laws, and they kind of do all the logistics for me. My mother-in-law does the dishes, God bless her heart. And I do all the cooking. So if they're happy and I'm happy, that's number one. Obviously being there with my barbecue buddies. And then if I get a call, that always makes my day.
And do you get competitive? Like when you're at these competitions, I understand that the culture and the environment is what we discussed a couple minutes ago, but how competitive are you with yourself as far as creating the best possible barbecue?
I'm get very competitive in that 2-hour window. So I'm pretty chill, like during the cook, lighting the pits, checking everything out. But during that 2-hour window when we're turning everything in, I kind of turn into a little bit bitch mode. People tell me, because I'm just like, okay, this is what it's all about. We've spent more than $1,000 to get here and to do this. We've got to make it work. And I'm definitely hard on myself if my ribs if they're a little more tight than I expected. And I try to find the best bones in the box. That's kind of my weakness right now, is with ribs. But yeah, I get hard on myself, but it comes back to, okay, I didn't get a call, but did I have fun? Was I with my family? And, was it a good day? So yeah, I've always been an independent competitive person. I was a gymnast and a diver and a lot of other sports, but that was always kind of individual sports for me. So yeah, I always want to bring my best, practice a lot, and try new flavor profiles. And yeah.
What is your favorite that you do so far? To this date right now, what's the thing that's blown your mind the most that you've created?
My brisket is, I've had people repeatedly tell me, even some of the teams competing at the Jack, saying that my brisket is among the top 5 briskets they've tasted. So that's just like, yeah, I can't even put it into words. Like, for people of that caliber to appreciate the brisket that I turn out is really something special. So I appreciate that.
Are you a fan of eating brisket?
Yeah.
Is it your favorite?
I'm definitely a beef girl. I love
beef.
Brisket. I do.
What is the secret of, is it fast, and is it high heat and fast, or is it slow and low? What is the secret?
I used to cook low and slow. I definitely do hot and fast now. So I'm cooking at about 325 degrees. Secret to competition barbecue brisket is you've got to start with a good brisket. I'm using the Wagyu Gold from Snake River Farms. Other people are using A9s from Australia, but Wagyu, something with really good marbling, is important. As a judge, interestingly enough, since I've judged the Jack multiple times and sitting next to these Hall of Famers and others who are talking to me about their brisket, what I heard over and over a couple of years ago was that brisket didn't taste like beef anymore. It tasted like MSG and injections, because that's usually a tactic that barbecue pit masters do. I do myself. I inject my brisket. But what people were injecting it with is too artificial, like I said, with the MSGs and just other things, that it was changing the flavor to where they weren't tasting the beef components. So I took it upon myself. That was probably in either 2018 or 2019 when I was hearing that feedback. So I changed my beef profile. I actually came out with my own brisket rub that's sold through Spiceology, and with all of that in mind. And now I cook my beef so that it's got a great brisket flavor. So I do an injection with it. I smoke it at that 325-ish temperature. It's all about getting the bark and the color first. People ask me about time. It's not about time. It's about color. When I get that nice color, then I actually put it in a half pan, an aluminum foil half pan. And that's when I add some beef broth to it and cover it with foil, and then let it finish. Take the foil back off so I get that bark back. And then just test it with the seasoning just to see if it needs another little small hit of something, just a fine dusting for that final pop. But it's all about tenderness and understanding when you put your probe in there toward the end, you want it to be like butter. You just want that thermometer to just slide in and out of it. And I do separate my flat from my point. So for those who don't know brisket, the brisket itself is 2 muscles, the flat and the point. The flat is a lot leaner, and the point is the fattier side where the burn ends come from. So I separate them because they do cook a little bit differently. But I actually learned a lot of the tips from Brad and Tim. They offer cooking classes, getting basted and shake and bake. Travis Clark offers a cooking class. So I've gone to a lot of these world championship classes to learn the techniques, and I've kind of combined what they do mixed with flavor profiles that I like, feedback I've gotten from other judges, and come up with my own kind of style.
And do you think that in the world of sporting events and how female sports have been viewed with male sports over the years, and now we have the WNBA, and we have scholarships and fairness and balance, which I love. I love that my daughter has an opportunity. Do you see equal balance in the game of barbecue, male versus female?
I do. And I think it's different than basketball per se, or other sports that are more physical, because obviously your body doesn't matter. I took a fun picture with Tim. I mean, you can be however the heck tall he is, 6'11", I don't know, or you can be me, 4'11". So it doesn't matter how tall you are, how strong you are, how voluptuous you are, how overweight you are, how skinny you are. None of that matters. So I think that's why gender doesn't really matter. It really just comes down to your palate and your ability to master your fire and understand meat and how meat cooks and good flavor profiles. So I think it's one of those sports that crosses the gender lines. And I've seen more and more females coming out. I mean, obviously there's females like Amy Mills and Leanne Whippen, who were judges this year, who have been inspirations for a lot of women like myself. And Lene Oxley from Sugar, she was out there cooking, and their team got some great calls. So it's definitely diversified, which is awesome.
I think that's so cool. Are you starting to see more and more women take that leap into the competition side of things?
What I've seen over the past 2 years is more and more women grilling. And I think the pellet grill has definitely introduced women to a new comfortability to grilling. So when I started Girls Can Grill about 6 years ago, what I was hearing from women is, they were scared of propane and, igniting their gas grill because the fire sometimes just poofs and kind of freaks them out. Or B, charcoal. They didn't like the getting dirty and then having to deal with the ashes. So then when pellet grills were introduced and became a little bit more mainstream a couple of years ago, it really made grilling more approachable. And I have found over the years, especially through Instagram and other things, you'll see more and more women out there cooking all sorts of things on the grill. And then over time, once they get that comfortability, then they start to transition and try out the charcoal and try out some of the other things, try out the live fire cooking like I like to do over just an open campfire. They're starting to experiment more. So while I haven't seen a huge insurgence of competitive pitmasters who are female, I think we're going to get there. I think because now more of them are more comfortable and then they see people in the sport like myself or like others, I think that they're starting to get introduced to it. And I hope in the next 2 to 3 years that we do see a big spike.
Be honest with me, Christie. Do you know that you're eating Getting Basted or Get Basted or Tim's Ribs? Do you know when it hits your mouth that it's theirs?
I don't know. And part of the reason I would say that
you've judged other competitions with them in it. So how do you not remember that when they win Tim's been winning, and Get Basted's been winning everything. So you don't remember the flavor profile, or do they change it up from time to time?
I would say it's a mix. I have a lot of teams do change up their flavor profiles because they will actually go and look and see who the judges are, and they kind of prejudge the judges. If it's a bunch of older women, they may tone down their spice level. If it's younger guys, then they might keep their spice level a little bit higher. So I know that there are championship teams who do that. They kind of survey the judges. But what I would also say is that because of what Brad and Tim have with the Barbecue League, which is an online program that you can join and learn kind of their tips and tricks, they share their recipes. So there's a lot of people actually cooking their recipes using the Blues Hog, using the different seasonings and spices that they offer, cooking with the same charcoal, cooking on the same cookers. There's people basically mimicking what they do. And Brad and Tim are confident enough to share their exact recipes because they know that they can still crush it. Because at the end of the day, it still comes down to your skill set, to your understanding of managing fire, to knowing when it needs another little pop of flavor, to knowing, oh, my tenderness isn't right. How can I adjust it at the last minute? And even though they teach it all, they just still are like the superheroes that have that magic touch. So a lot of the flavors may taste the same. And I even actually heard, I think it was Famous Dave say, I taste a lot of Blues Hog today because that's the Blues Hog Tennessee Red is what a lot of people use to wrap their pork or their ribs. The Blues Hog sauce, original sauce, a lot of people are using on, the different components of their cooks too. So flavors are similar. So that's why I don't know. I can't tell.
Have you ever opened a box and went, whoa, presentation sucks, but then you tasted it, they still score high, even though you're looking at it like, wow, they didn't really take the time? Does anybody not take the time? Do they get in a rush and it's not like exactly what you want that box to look at when you open it?
I would say not at the Jack. The Jack, those folks know what they're doing. However, when I've judged and there's been international teams there, I would say that their presentation's not necessarily as traditional as America barbecue, but we don't judge differently because of that. So again, one thing that some judges fall into a trap of is they will see a box of pork, for instance, and there's a cut that's basically like the loin of the pork, but that's called the money muscle because that was the winner. Like if you, in the past, if you put that in the box, that was money, that was going to get you a win. Well, now everybody pretty much puts money muscle in the box. That's all some people turn in. Some people still turn in pulled or chunks or tubes. But anyway, so some judges unfortunately have the perception, oh, well, if they didn't put money muscle in the box, and they probably don't know how to cook it, so I'm going to score them down on appearance. That's the wrong way to judge. It should be based solely on what's in the box. Does this look appetizing? So when we got some other turn-ins, which I can only assume were from international teams because they didn't look the traditional way, sometimes they would just put in a box of just all pulled pork. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is allowed by KCBS rules and should absolutely qualify for a 9 so long as it looks appetizing. But yes, you'll see in the past at the Jack, that's the only time is when there's been international teams where I'd seen one that's maybe a little sloppy. Maybe they didn't wipe the sauce from the edge. You might see that more in regular KCBS comps or definitely backyard comps. But this year, there was no bad boxes. Everything looked gorgeous.
Is it really important though? Like when you open it up, is that like first impressions? Like you hear that all the time. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Is that the same with barbecue?
It is. But you're supposed to, as a judge, score it independently, score each category independently. So appearance comes first. And yes, you should say, boy, that looks appetizing. That's a 9. Now you get something and maybe it doesn't look as appetizing. The color might look wrong on the chicken. And maybe you can just tell by looking at it that the skins aren't cooked all the way through. So you might throw a 7 because it doesn't look appetizing. But then when you get to your taste, if you are wrong and that appearance was wrong and you bite through and that's actually really tender and the skin cuts through nicely, then you should still score it a 9 or 8 if it deserves it. But most of the time, I would say if it doesn't look super appetizing or it looks dry before you even take a bite, it probably will be. So then it will probably be reflective. But there's a chance it could still score well.
That's interesting to me. Because there's so much time that's put into that part of it, of making those. I mean, it doesn't even look like real barbecue. It's so pretty to me, man. It almost looks like those photo props, like the fake food. But So overall, Christie, talk to me. Let's end it by your overall feeling of the 2021. The back of all the shirts, the motto was "The Jack is back." The park was packed. The numbers were a little down, but again, people are still a little hesitant. It'll come back all the way. The trophies, the trophy, the celebration at the end, it was all so key and so nice to see everybody getting along and supporting each other. The high fives, the hugs, the tent would go nuts when somebody's name was called. They all support each other so much because you just never know. Next year, it could be somebody else's turn. It's all going to keep transitioning and the palettes are going to change. The judges are going to change. And those people that support the ones that are winning now are the ones that are going to be winning and have the support from the past winners. So overall, talk to me about it. Let's go out with a bang of how awesome the 2021 Jack was.
It was amazing. It was so beautiful. I left with such a high that lasted for days by the time I was back in Vegas. I mean, from the start, first of all, you just drive into Lynchburg and it's beautiful and, the leaves are changing, which is not what you commonly see in Las Vegas. So there's just all of that, just the smell in the air of the mash, just all of that was great. And then we kicked it off with Barbecue Hill with that band, with the James Dean and the Treatment. I mean, that was a great stage setter for everything. And then just being with family. And I loved the slogan, "The Jack is back," because it just gave that resurgence of energy I think that we've all been looking for post-COVID. If we're in fact even post-COVID, who knows anymore. But it felt normal again. It felt like what life used to be like, and it was irreplaceable. And I'm so excited for 2022. I think it's going to be even better. I think, like you said, there was a little bit of apprehension of the spectators, should they come out or not. Even some vendors, struggling of it's been hard for me to keep in business for all this time. Should I vend? They've been struggling. And I think now that we've seen that it can be done, it can happen. And it was so amazing. And the teams executed fabulously like they always do. I know a couple of the teams that I talked to who were there for the first time, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to win every year because I've got to come back to the Jack. So yeah, I can't wait to go back myself.
I cannot wait to. First off, it was a pleasure meeting you. You and your sister are awesome, and I loved our time around the campfire. And
absolutely,
and just that's what's so neat about this life is you just never know when you wake up in your bed in Reno, Nevada. You're in Las Vegas, where my alma mater in college is. You just have no idea that's going on in Lynchburg. I could have been up at Lake Tahoe that weekend, sure. on the beach, enjoying a boat ride, and you just have no idea. There's so many cool things going on in this world that a lot of us aren't privy to. And I love that about media and podcasting. I'm not a huge fan of where social media has taken a lot of what we do in a lot of different sectors of our life, but at least it gives us the ability to stay in touch and understand that there's a lot of life out there. And being in Lynchburg and meeting folks like you and your sister and being around Glenn and Greg and Casey and Dean James and Tommy Miller and Dave and Kevin the Barrel Man. I mean, the hospitality party on Saturday night. Yes. I mean, we opened a bottle of Sinatra Century. The speeches that were going on, the awards he got, the license plate from Illinois. I just love life. And I think that when people see a bottle of Jack Daniels up on the shelf at their local grocery store or liquor store or the bar or their local pub, that they sit there and talk to that bartender, I want them to think about this of what it really means for that bottle to have that label on it, and how lucky that glass is to be branded Jack Daniels. Those barrels, how lucky that wood is to have that liquid touch them, and how lucky that liquid is to have that oak, to sit in for that long, an average of 4 to 7 years. There's so much that goes into a brand like Jack Daniels. I don't want people to ever think that, I'm not saying that we all don't have different palates, Miss Christie. I'm not saying that Get Basted is better than Tuffy Stone, or Tuffy Stone is better than Get Basted. Everything comes and goes. There's always the ebb and flows of everything. So listen to me when I say this, please. There used to be a commercial for hot sauce or salsa called Pace Picante, and it was made in New York City, right? It couldn't be real. There's this analogy or misconception that this barbecue sauce sucks because it's on the store shelves, and mine's way better because it's homemade. Well, at one time, that barbecue sauce, in most cases, not saying all cases, but that was the homemade barbecue sauce, and it just got big because the word spread. Jack Daniels is huge, but then there's that analogy that, well, there's a lot of custom whiskeys out there. Budweiser sucks because these microbrews are way better, and this is way better than Budweiser's big because it tastes so good. That's why people drink it. Okay. I just want it to be known that Jack Daniels is everywhere for a reason. It's not only distilled and charcoaled the correct way to get at the flavors that it's gotten, but it's the aura and the culture and the story. It's the iconic branding that they've put on this story of who Jack was and what it's been doing, passed down from generation to generation, from master distiller. Jeff Arnett was at the hospitality party. Chris Fletcher was around. Miss Lexi Phillips was around, the first female master distiller, assistant to the master distiller in the history of the company. Just when you look at that bottle, no matter where you see that old number 7 or that gentleman or that single barrel, think about what it goes into. And the barbecue is just another part of that. The military, everything that they do for so many different people in this world. That's what I want you to think about. It doesn't have to be your favorite whiskey, but don't ever think, oh, it's just Jack Daniels. It's everywhere. It's a generic whiskey. It's not. It's the most taken care of, most properly distilled, probably adult beverage spirit in the history of the world. And I truly mean that. It's the best there is, and the people that live in Lynchburg make it the best there is. They made a promise that every day that we make it, we're going to make it the very best that we can. And that's what the barbecue signified to me. The best people are there. The best attitudes are there. The support's there. The best barbecue pitmasters in the world are there. I just think it was an unbelievable experience, and I'm so proud that I met you, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks. So well said. Thank you.
I can't wait to do it again. So let's try to get together before the next Jack, October 2022. Thank you so much for everything that you do for barbecue. Tell your sister hello. And when I see you again, we will toast to Jack Daniels and sip on one and tell more stories.
Cheers.
That's Christie. Girlscangrill.com on Instagram.
Yes.
At Girls Can Grill.
Yep, that's right.
All right, next time you cook a brisket, please put some in an overnight package wrapped in foil and send it my way. I'll send you my address.
Sounds good.
That's another episode of This Life Ain't For Everybody. Jack Daniels, thank you so much. Enjoy it responsibly. Never allow underage drinking. Y'all check out the world of barbecue, grilling, the Jack, all of these competitions. Get involved in a local one. Go judge. Go compete. Go see what you can do up against other people that think they have the chops to be a pit master. We can all be a backyard aficionado. Take pride. Have passion in what you serve to your friends and family. Whether you're growing your own beef or buying it at the store, whether you're a hunter or a fisher, take pride in preparing that bounty. Know where your food comes from. Know the story of it. Respect the resource. Have compassion for the animals that we pursue, and serve the very best food that you can on that table as you toast your wine or your Jack Daniels. I'm Chad Belling. This has been another episode of This Life Ain't For Everybody. Leith Lofton, please take us out. This is what you're going to do when the money's all gone.
'Cause I'd rather be poor living off in a hole than rich as hell without a soul. Life on earth won't last too